Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome in Big 12 Fan Zone. All the Big 12 teams are represented on this channel. I'm Joey Foster, and in a minute I'll bring in my co-host. But we've been on vacation. We've had a lot to do. He's been on vacation for a week, and I had a lot to do for the week. So we're back with you now after being off last week. Looking forward to a great show. Y'all stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome in, everyone. I'm Joey Foster. That right over there is Mr. Shane. Shane, man, how was last week for you? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, a little bit of work, a little bit traveling. I got to see Eugene, where the Ducks play, and then I stayed in Corvallis, home of Oregon State, and what a great college town. Reminds me a lot of like a Manhattan, Kansas, a Morgantown, about the same size. Really just nice getting out and seeing other college towns, but a lot of rumors and speculation, and I'm going to say it. Me and you, have been saying for months, there's not a matter of if, it's when. And I think we had some, maybe it's only like a 2 on the seismic scale as far as like tremors in the college football. Seismic shift is going to come. I think we're going to have a huge earthquake when Florida State decides to pack their bags and move. But I don't know, Joey. What are your thoughts on the
Yeah,
past
I think
couple
it's going to
weeks?
be I do. I think there will be an earthquake if Florida State decides to move. If they get out of there, you know, I can see them making a move, and then other teams just saying, okay, there's no need in being in this conference now because we lost all that money. So it's time for us to make a move, and then they jump. So then I wonder, okay, the Big 12 goes out and expands and picks up some of these teams, Pitt, Virginia Tech, teams like that. We go out and get them. Or, according to the articles that were coming out this past week or the past few days,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, could um, could West Virginia and Cincinnati and UCF maybe jump over to the ACC and save it? So so there's also the reports that possibly uh the 2 conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, go to 24 teams apiece. And we got a little graphic to show what that looked like. And I'll let Shane go over this with you. There you go, Shane.
Yeah, so Andy Staples, he did an interview with Neil Brown about 10 days ago, and then he came out with this hot take. And I was, as a Mountaineer fan, I was very happy to see West Virginia on there, and surprised to see Pitt, made the cut. But and most people that most articles I've read and videos I've watched have had West Virginia on their lists. But I say with a big but, taking the Mountaineer hat off and not being a fan for a minute, does West Virginia add the value? I think it does, because it's a big school, a big state, covers a whole state, and it's more of a region, and there's a lot of alumni. But what I don't see on the list is Kansas, an up and coming football school with a basketball problem. Right? They're getting a new stadium. I did not see. TCU on this list.
Yeah, and just a year removed from the national championship game.
15 months away from playing for a nationality. Now TCU is a private school, and I don't know exactly what the enrollment is off the top of my head, but I know it's not as big as a UCF. Okay, UCF has a giant student population and probably even a bigger alumni association. So do they stay at 48? Is 48 the number, Joey? I mean, is that manageable? I think that's the smallest it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I've been thinking that they'll have 3 20-team or 3 22-team super conferences, you know. But we do know the Big Two are talking and seem to be doing everything together. So are they talking about jumping ship and leaving the NCAA and starting their own stuff? I guess that's what we can speculate on and worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we don't know. Maybe the SEC and Big Ten, maybe the Big 12 and the ACC agreed to just let them talk on their behalf, and they know where they all
Well,
stand, and they're just doing it. I mean, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, right?
and this is the Big 12 channel. What happens with Big 12 basketball? Okay, the best basketball conference in the land, hands down.
Right.
And if that happens, do you have are the 48 teams represented here by Andy Staples on 3-pick? Is that going to exclude these teams from participating in March Madness for basketball, Joey?
Right. Well,
You know?
I'm looking at some teams here that he has on here. Like, for instance, he has NC State in the SEC. I
Okay.
don't see that happening. I think that won't happen. So I have a feeling that would open up a door for a Kansas or TCU, right?
Okay.
Because I think they're bigger brands, better brands. So I just think that they would take them. Although the SEC with them footprints down there, and getting over in North Carolina, that's probably why he put NC State on here, because there's no UNC except in the Big Ten. So it gets SEC a footprint as well if they bring in NC State. So
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the Big Ten first, and I'm going to go through 3 teams that I would question whether they belong with the big boys. Okay, and I know this is a Big 12 channel, but we're gonna take some pot shots at the Big Ten, and I'm gonna start with Rutgers. Rutgers, when they were in the Big East, they were the homecoming game for a lot of schools, Joey, right?
I know it, right? Yeah.
And that was in the Big East.
Except
And
for
all of a sudden,
2001 when they had Ray Rice. That's the only time that they had
one year they were contenders for the Big East championship. And was it Greg Schiano that had them playing ball?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's
so he
back.
had
He's
them
back
playing
there
ball for a
doing a good
while.
job.
Yeah, but Rutgers and Northwestern, I mean, what value do those teams? You can't tell me that an Arizona or an Arizona State wouldn't add more value. And you're bringing in Utah, Washington, or I mean, Rutgers, like, okay, no, I'm not even Oregon State. Maybe I'm jaded because I went out there and had some good pizza and some good food out there, but let's just talk about Arizona, Arizona State. What are some other teams that might fit better in the Big Ten? I don't.
I just think that Kansas, Iowa State.
Kansas in the Big Ten. Yeah, Iowa State in the Big Ten. Iowa State, they put butts in seats. They're a quality program. I think it's a better program than Rutgers. Although Rutgers has been playing football almost probably as long as anybody, maybe Princeton, Yale.
Longer than anyone.
Yeah, longer than anyone. First football game. But guys, we're talking about value and branding. And now above is that above Vanderbilt, that State? What school is that? That's the one that I was scratching my head
Mississippi
today.
State.
Mississippi State. Okay, that's what I thought. The Bulldogs. So, everybody on the SEC list, I have no issues with, and I don't even have an issue with North Carolina. Okay, because that is that's a good get. If the Big Ten's getting UNC, I could see the SEC saying we're going to take North Carolina. Would you have cross conference rivalries for matchups? What would you think you would continue that, or would it just you play who's in your conference, Joey?
Yeah, I think. Well, I'm sure they're going to have 1 or 2 out of conference games still, maybe 3 still. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing about it is, if you're looking at this, there's no there's no free games in there for anybody, right? These are
No,
the upper echelon of football, right? This is the best teams.
no, sir. The
So
days,
it's not
yep.
like so when you're doing your out of conference scheduling, you're not looking at Power Five. You're not looking at SEC and Big Ten to schedule games. Most likely, you're going
Yeah,
to
and
be
I don't
looking
think
at
they're going to be scheduling like Wofford or William and Mary or Northwest Presbyterian State or some like little teeny made up school. Okay, guys, I
yeah.
think it's going to be on this list. I can see Virginia Tech and Virginia playing interconference game as a rivalry. I can see Pitt and Penn State playing. I can see Florida State and Miami still playing. That's a great rivalry. But you do have NC State coming in playing against South Carolina, and you do have maybe there's a rivalry between Kentucky and West Virginia that would build, and you make these games have sponsorship. Like the backyard
Mhm.
brawl presented by whatever UPMC or whatever, or Giant Eagle presents the backyard brawl or Sheets or something regional for that, and for Virginia Tech have it market it as like basically a bowl game during the season, as a way to get revenue.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. That's the thing about it. Every one of the schools that are on his list for SEC and Big Ten, that's the teams that make the most money. I know a lot of people say, and I hear this a lot, and I'm sure everybody else does too. And I'm not talking as a homer here for West Virginia to you Big 12 fans. I promise you. I just want to bring something up. So West Virginia SEC, and I know a lot of people say, well, that just makes no sense. They don't belong there. And people think West Virginia is a small brand. It's just not true. West Virginia is a huge brand. One of the bigger brands in the country as far
yeah.
as like their sales, as far as merchandise, their fan following, their TV market,
Mhm.
the revenue they take in. They only subsidize $8 million. Most teams are subsidizing 30, $40 million into their athletic revenue. And so most teams are subsidizing a lot. You see some of these teams that says you say, okay, West Virginia made 105 million or 106 million or something like that in
Mhm.
2022 in athletic. They made 126 million, and then you look at something like another school and you say, but they made 125 million. So they're the bigger athletic program. But you have to look at what's subsidized, and that bigger program that made
Yeah,
120 million, well, they're subsidizing 25
propped up.
million of that. So now all of a sudden they're down to 95 million. West Virginia's only subsidizing 8 million, so they're at 98 million. So who's the bigger program? So
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that people don't understand about that. So West Virginia would be a likely candidate, even pretty early, probably one of the next ones if the SEC was to expand again. I really believe that
Yeah, I mean,
West
they're
Virginia would
right
be an
ahead
early
of
pick.
Oklahoma State from the stats I've seen as far as branding and value.
Well, not only that,
Fanatics,
but West Virginia has the 15th winningest program in college football, right?
right?
And they have the number 15
Right.
NIL collective right now, number 15 in the
Yeah, and
country.
they're as like 3 years ago there was an article by Sports Illustrated on 150 years of football, the best brands or the biggest, and they did it by 10% win percentage and 20% by longevity, and uh, West Virginia was easily in the top 50. So, but you had Princeton and Yale in the top 15. So I mean there were some other teams ahead of them that you would not label as top tier teams now. But if you remember back, Missouri snuck in last minute and passed in front of West Virginia getting the SEC. But
Hmm.
this is the Big 12 show, so we're going to talk about. I want to talk about Miami. Okay, some people I heard have Miami you know just at the brink of making the SEC. I think that's crazy. Even if you're not a U fan, they are a great brand and a program that has historically over the past 40 years have been fantastic one of the best college football teams ever was, I think, their 2001 or 2000 team. But, Kansas State got in on this list over Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
that's
know I've seen
surprising.
that, and I don't understand. I didn't understand that at all either. Let's do something real quick. Let's say hi to our
Yeah.
chat. People in here.
Yeah, let's say
Jackson
hi.
Johnson, of course. Jackson Johnson always in here. Appreciate you being here. Of course, we got Timothy Green. Hello, Joey and James. Good to see y'all back. Look here, man. We've got South Carolina fan, Mr. Twisted Rooster, the salty
Yeah,
Gamecocks in
Gamecock
here.
fan. I want to hear what he has to say about NC State coming in to the SEC if this were to happen.
Yeah, if that were to happen, right? Yeah, that would be an interesting thing. Yeah, Rooster, if you're out there, man, let me know that you're still out there, and if you'd like to come on, I'll drop you the link. But I want to go back to uh, what you were saying there, though, and I done lost my train of thought, so you might want to pick up.
No,
And
I was just saying that Kansas, made it in, and Kansas did not. But
right. And Kansas being the better basketball program, Kansas State being the better football program. But here's the thing: before Bill Snyder got there, Kansas State was one of the worst college football teams out there, without a doubt. They were
right.
one of the
And
worst.
you look down here, you have Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas. It's like an old family reunion,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know. So yeah, I think yeah, you flip a coin there. But now here's another thing too. It's just like the legislature we see going on now out there, where these states are passing laws saying if you take one of these schools, you got to take both these schools. Like North Carolina State or something. So what would happen in Kansas? Would Kansas State and Kansas have to go to be a package deal?
Well, you know what? In that case, do you not take either of them and take someone else that maybe provides a better value? I mean, it comes down to how much is one program dragging the other down. And I don't think that Kansas is going to drag down Kansas State because they have a good coach this year. They're building a new facility. But like in Corvallis, their stadium is gorgeous. It's been newly renovated. It's just fantastic. I don't think there's a bad seat there. It's very intimate and very, it's not a huge venue, but every seat looks to be like a great seat. But they're on the outside looking in, trying to find a home.
Right. So if let's just say something like this happens. Let's say Florida State leaves the ACC and no other program jumps out of there, and the ACC goes and takes a team like UCF, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. They pick up them three. Does the Big 12 reach out and grab Oregon State and Washington State real quick? I mean, why not at that point, right?
I don't know if they go to them first. The Big 10 might start poaching the ACC.
Yeah.
I
true,
think what's going to happen is, my understanding of the contract is 8 teams. 8 teams need to leave in order for the penalty, the monetary, slap on the wrist they get for leaving. So you have Clemson and Florida State are 2 that come to mind. I don't know.
Well, they obviously don't have 8 for some reason.
No.
If you remember, there was a thing in the paper 6 months ago about there were 6 teams or 7 teams.
Yeah, that was close.
Pitt wasn't on that list, and I'm sitting there thinking, why wouldn't if Pitt would get on there? That would make the 8. They could leave. Why wouldn't Pitt be on that list? You would think Pitt would say, I want out here too. If these teams are going to be leaving, that's not going to leave nothing for us.
And I wonder how many congressmen, how many governors, alumni of high stature, Fortune 500, the wheelers and dealers that grease the skids and oil the cogs in the decision making process. How many presidents are getting calls at universities, and I wonder what's happening in the back
We
end.
got a little guest in the back room here with us. Mr. Jackson Johnson wants to come in and talk a
Hey,
little bit.
Jackson.
Boy, say Jackson.
How you doing, gents?
Hey, Jackson, we were having this conversation a month ago, right? And here we are again. There's been a little bit of a tremor, and everybody's talking about it again. But I love this topic. I know it's people get sick of it, but
I don't know if people are getting sick of it.
Yeah,
Go
because
ahead,
it kind of feels like the off-season discussion every season. Who's going where? That's not good.
Yeah.
No, but the thing about it is, let's be honest. How many times have any of us been right? I mean, we were right. We were right about Oregon and Washington going to the Big Ten, right? But that was a pretty obvious move. Everybody knew that was going to happen. But now we didn't know USC and UCLA were going to jump to the Big Ten. We didn't know Oklahoma and Texas were jumping to the SEC. And then when they jumped, we started speculating, and everybody started speculating about the Big 12's done. They're finished, and this team's going to go to the Big Ten. This one's going to the SEC. This one's going to ACC. And everybody started guessing on where all the teams were going to go. Hey, that all fell apart. We were just not ever right. Think about it. We don't have a good track record here of doing this stuff on any channel, not just our channel, any YouTube channel or anywhere. No one's been able to get it right. So I'm looking. I look forward and watch all these videos, but I know in the back of my mind, whatever happens is probably going to be something we least expect.
And people are like, they just want their team to be included, not be the ones on the outside looking in. That's the biggest thing. It's validation through seeing something like this, where Andy Staples picks West Virginia. It makes me feel a lot better. But if I was a Kansas fan, I would be sick, if this were to happen,
So Rooster says South Carolina fans tell you NC State is more of a rival than UNC. Rooster, if you'd like to come in, I dropped the link there. We'd love to have you in here.
South Carolina fans, NC State is a bigger rivalry, and that's why I like seeing them in the SEC instead of North Carolina. North Carolina always has been, hasn't been a good football program until recently. I'm going to get crap for that, but go ahead, put it in the comments. But I think NC State has been consistently better over a stretch of time. But
I think UNC is built. I think UNC is built for the Big Ten, right? I think the whole school is built for a Big Ten school. It's not just that the football team is and the basketball team. It's not that. I mean the whole structure of the school, how it's laid out, their library, their transportation things, how they do things, and they are just built for the Big Ten to where they could just fit right in there and slide right in, and it wouldn't even be a headache to none of them. They wouldn't even break a sweat transitioning there. I really don't believe because they're just built for that. But NC State, I don't think so.
I was wondering if I could see the Andy Staples thing again.
Yeah, pull that up again real quick.
So I'm looking at it right in front of me, and we get Georgia Clemson back. We get Florida Miami back. We get West Virginia Tech back. Oklahoma State's back on an annual basis. Penn State,
Texas A&M.
Yep. Well, I mean, Texas A&M. I know that's going to be back starting this year. Penn State, Pittsburgh's coming back on an annual basis. Virginia, Maryland's back. Notre Dame, Michigan, and Notre Dame, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Purdue is back. But I noticed that we're going to lose BYU, Utah. We're going to lose. We could be losing Florida State, Miami, and honestly, that breaks my heart.
And Arizona and Arizona State. That's what we're talking about. When you don't have Arizona State, Utah, is Colorado on here? Colorado's not on here either. So that's where I can't agree with this. This is the most unlikely thing to happen right here.
Right. I just there's if I'm just looking at teams I would like to see, you would almost have to have 56 instead of 48.
And
Yeah,
what
I
happens
mean,
to North Carolina, North Carolina State, and North Carolina Duke? Will they have like annual? Would there be annual non-conference rivalries for the SEC and Big Ten in that case, or
I would
no?
think so. I think you would have Pitt, Penn State, and Jackson. I like the thought of having these non-conference rivalry games for rivalry week and have it be like a seasonal bowl game where it's presented by, Texas Roadhouse, the Red River rivalry, or Home Depot presents, Virginia versus Virginia Tech. I mean, that's just my thoughts. I think that would be a way to kind of supplement, the,
y'all
because
think
it's going to
about this.
cost a crap load of money,
So what y'all think about this? What if? So when this happens, or if something like this was to happen, I look for them to raise, especially SEC. SEC plays 8 conferences games right now. I
Yeah.
look for them to raise that to at least 10. I think the Big Ten raises it to at least 10 as well. But here's my thought on that. They say, okay, you have 10 conference games, but hey, West Virginia and Pitt, we want you two to play each other every year. SEC Big Ten. So West Virginia and Pitt, when y'all play every year, you can count that as a conference game.
No,
And they
yeah,
get to
I mean,
choose one game to be a conference game.
I think they'll still. I think there's enough. I mean, I look at this. I look at the number here, and you'll play a certain amount of teams every year, and I think you'll have like. I see three. I see 3 subdivisions in the SEC and 3 in the Big Ten. You play your regional rivalries, your teams, and then you go play a couple. For example, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia Tech would have to be on the schedule every year because it just makes sense. Your Florida, Georgia, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, South Carolina are all very close. Your North Carolina and South Carolina could play, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. Your Missouri, Arkansas, LSU, Vandy all play each other, and then in the bottom is your old Big 8, cats playing each other. I just think it's going to be broken down more of like that, in my personal opinion. Now, if you brought in Colorado and you brought in Arizona State, because you could bring in at 56, you could bring in 4 teams on each. But would Arizona State and Arizona go to the Big Ten? I think that's more likely. But what do you think, Jackson? You think they stop at 48, or are they going to have 50 or 56?
Good grief!
I heard as high as 60.
I'm
think that's a
thinking
little
they'll.
much.
I think the SEC is going to try to get the 20 before the Big Ten does, at least for now.
Yeah, I agree. And right here we're sitting at 24. So if they go,
See, that's why I think there'll just be 3 20-team conferences or 3 22-team conferences. I just feel like that's what they're going to go to probably. I feel like that's where it's headed. I know everybody's saying it's going to be two conferences. That's all it's going to be. And if you have that third 20-team conference, if you have that third one, and it's the Big 12, let's say, how is it going to be looked at compared to the other 2 conferences? And so, yeah, it can create a problem there. So you have to worry about that as well. But I think it's the way it's headed. I mean, I just don't see. I mean, it could be that the SEC and Big Ten. I don't guess there's any limit on the number of teams they could put in there. So they could each put 30 if and if they wanted to, right? They could each put 32 or 34 if they wanted to, I guess.
Yeah, I think over 60 is a little
limit.
much, but I mean, I think 60 is the sweet spot because that'll get you, that gets you 12 teams. That gets you 12 more teams. That's 6 in each conference. You could have your Colorado, your Arizona State, and your BYU, and 2 other teams coming over to the Big Ten, right? Your SEC is gonna, also at the Big Ten could get Kansas there. It's number 5. The SEC could get let's think of some other teams that the SEC could get.
Clemson.
Yeah, they have Clemson there. What about, I mean, even a Duke or I don't know. Duke's more of a Big Ten team, but I really don't know if they'll pull them in. But what about a BYU for the SEC and a because BYU is a good brand. I mean, they have a rabid fan
Let
base,
me
a huge alumni.
let me bring somebody in. I'm gonna bring
Okay.
in Twisted Rooster here with us. So, Twisted Rooster, Kevin, what's going on, brother?
How you doing, Mr. Joey Foster? Shane Jackson?
Hey, how you doing, Kevin?
Oh,
What do
Yeah,
you
man.
think? What do you think of the SEC going west if they were to pull?
Have you seen? Let me pull that up for you there,
Pull it up.
Kevin, so you can see that if you need to. That's according to Andy Staples. That's what he sees happening.
adding another Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. I can see Oklahoma State, Kansas.
Kansas left out.
Yeah, Kansas. He got Kansas State, but he
Kansas
left out
State
Kansas.
down
So
there.
he brought in. He brought in West Virginia, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State into the SEC, as well as Clemson, NC State, Miami, and there was one Virginia Tech. So he got 4 out of the Big 12, 4 out of the ACC, and put them in the SEC. And I guess he did the same thing on the Big
They got
Ten. I
Utah
haven't
over
really
a Big Ten territory there.
The only weird thing about the way he
Yeah.
did that is the SEC tends to take the logo schools of the state. They take the state universities over, like Texas A&M getting in before Texas was advantage Texas A&M. Had Texas joined first, I don't know if they'd have taken Texas A&M, but I don't know. There's a lot of money out there. But when you start bringing in, I think they would tend to look at like a West Virginia, and North Carolina over Virginia Tech or one of those, just because they like those state schools.
They like the flagship schools, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the Big
That's
Ten's
true.
big on Virginia because of their accreditation. I think that's the big draw there, and that's why they wanted Maryland, even though Maryland wasn't, is no more of a draw than say a West Virginia. I think it's actually West Virginia is probably has a bigger fan base than Maryland. But I don't know. It's really it's where the wind's blowing and who you're asking. But it seems to be a lot of the folks have commented on this list, and that's why we're talking about it here on the show tonight. There's been multiple videos where people have talked about this, and the things they keep bringing up is NC State, West Virginia, and the omission of Kansas, and then on the back end of that, the Big Ten, do you still keep Rutgers and, Northwestern? What value do they bring?
Yeah. Well, they need to remember Miami went out and got AAU status for a reason. So
Right.
Miami going to the SEC. Well, I guess it would depend on Florida State and what Florida State did. The SEC is not going to carry 3 Florida schools, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these schools don't. I think it's going to be more than 2 conferences. I don't think you can get down to 2. I don't think the dollar value is going to add up for the TV contracts.
Right.
You better off to spread it. Yeah. I mean, if you think about basketball, you go into basketball is what 64 teams now in March Madness. So if you're spread, if you're spread out through 3 conferences and each conference is carrying about 20 teams, you got about 60 Power 5 schools. And I think a lot of schools will end up. I mean, just look, Washington State getting left out. All that's kind of surprising, right? You would think those are schools going to stay in the Power 5, but if the value is not there, TV contract's not going to pay it.
Yeah, Washington State is almost by Idaho, and there's nothing around there, but they have a rabid fan base. It's definitely a great college town. It's no different than Manhattan, Kansas, or Morgantown. Corvallis is the same way. It's in between Eugene and Portland, but it has, half the state love Beavers and the other half love the Ducks. It's just the way it is. I just don't see. I think there's too much money left on the table if you go straight to 2, unless you have 2 giant super conferences with 30 apiece, which you're going to have to break into subdivisions. So you might as well just have 3.
Yeah, if you do that, you might as well just go into the NFL model and be done with it.
Well, that's what happened. They had the AFC and NFC for 3 years, and they decided, well, let's just merge. You know,
You'll end up
Jackson, you look deep in thought. Are you okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm just thinking about where the future college football's heading.
This is what I'd like to see, and I'd like to make a video on this. So I'd like everybody to participate. Send me an email, and even you in the chat too. Send me an email and let me know what you think college football is going to look like in 2030. And here's what I want you to do, though. I want you to tell me every move that's going to be made, if you can. Try to tell me what's going to be the next move in college football, and build us up until 2030 and show us what college football is going to look like in 2030. I'll make a video on it and show your ideas and stuff. I think that'd be pretty cool.
And I have a question for the group. We're going to kind of go to the back half of the segment for our show tonight. So there was a recent interview with Saban, kind of hinted around to why he retired, and we touched upon this. When we had Eugene Napoleon on, we touched on this when we had other folks on our show over the past couple months. Okay, what he said. Bottom line is, he used to have to just talk to players about making the best opportunity for themselves, getting them prepared for life, the NFL, and making great young men out of these players. That's what his mission statement was. And over this year, and especially after they lost to Michigan, 70% of the players were, first question to him was, how much playing time am I going to get next year? How much money am I going to get? So with that being said, a coach that's 70 years old or 71, however old Nick is, he saw the writing on the wall that the transition of the ways, the college football facilitate. I burped there. So, facilitating, a program and overseeing it, it's not what it used to be. And for him, he decided it would be better for him to kind of transition out and move on because he didn't like what he was seeing. With that being said, what coaches out there are going to hang up the whistle, and what new coaches are actually embracing this? I see some coaches out there that, maybe Gundy, or maybe, but Lance Leopold looks like he has it wrapped, has his hands wrapped around the problem. He's tackling it. But, what are your thoughts, Kevin, what do you think? Do you think this is something are we going to see the old guard in the next year or two kind of just retire and just lay down their whistles and tap out?
Yeah, I can see guys, like Mac Brown is probably close to retirement anyway. Why would he want to fight it? The younger generation, I think, of the coaches that are coming now, these guys that are in their late 30s, early 40s and all that stuff, they have more of a feel, I think, for the kids these days because they're more into, the Instagrams and the Twitters, and they get a feel for the kind of what's going on. With the older coaches, not so much technology friendly type coaches.
Yeah.
You're not going to see Mac Brown on Twitter putting out a bunch of stuff about a recruit. So yeah, I think it'll get to that. Sooner or later, you're going to see a bunch of them go. But I think Nick Saban, where I think he's going here is to help all of college football try to come up with a solution.
Commissioner.
So what it is or something like that. I even made a video. I'm like, put him in an office, give him 70 TVs where he can Zoom call all these people he needs to Zoom call to try to figure out how to at least help. But you're never going to get rid of it.
I don't see them figuring it out at like a school like Iowa, where Ferentz's been there since Iowa became a school. It seems like he's been there forever. So I don't see him figuring out NIL all of a sudden. So I can see that some of these coaches would probably be wanting out, but you're right. I'm wondering how many coaches in their 50s are going to win out. The coaches that have coached for a long time, like Matt Rule, wonder how Matt Rule is going to be able to do, because when he left college football, NIL was just getting started, right? And then he didn't have to deal with it. Now he's back to college football, and it's thrown at him, and he's not been here the whole time. So this is going to be a really hard thing on Matt Rule. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine being a coach and you walk in and the first thing out of a player's mouth is, how much money am I going to make and how much playing time am I going to get? Dude, you got to work for that. You come to the program and figure things out, and then we'll talk that stuff. I mean, and that's what you want to tell him as a coach. But I can understand where, as a head coach, and you want that player, you can't really tell him that anymore. You got to look at him and tell him, yeah, you're going to get to play, and then knowing in your heart that he may not get to play. But couldn't be honest with him because he just goes somewhere else.
Mike Gundy looks like a guy that's not going to put up with it very long. I mean, he'll be out.
Yep.
Do y'all think Dabo is Dabo going to put up with this much longer?
Oh, I doubt it. He's fit to be tied. Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Terry Bowden, 67. And he's coaching at University of Louisiana Monroe. What was it? Kirk Ferentz was the guy you were talking about at Iowa. He's 68.
Right.
Mac Brown, 72. Frank Solich is coaching at Ohio. He's 74. But that's, he's on his down. He's at a smaller school, but still, I mean, he still has to deal with this crap.
Heck, look at Chip Kelly. Just walked away from UCLA and goes to be a offensive coordinator at Ohio State. It's just like, okay, now the headache's on the head coach. This ain't my problem anymore.
I can worry about the offense
on calling plays.
Kevin, I've seen that, and that's the first thing I thought of was that had to be it. I thought of that. I said that's got to be why. Is he tired of this NIL thing?
Moved to Penn State.
Well, and now a lot of these, like South Carolina, a lot of these coaches that are at these smaller schools are taking the same amount of money to go be an assistant at a bigger school, because then now they don't have to deal with it. Like Sean Elliott just came back to South Carolina. Well, Sean Elliott, basically Georgia State, don't really have a lot of NIL to work with to try to get players to be competitive. So he's back at South Carolina as a tight end coach, helping with the offensive line, making the same amount of money with a lot less headache.
Yeah. And that's going to be a lot of coaches. You're right. It's going to be a lot of coaches. These people that are head coaches now at a smaller school, and they've got to deal with all this headache and all this added stuff on them. Yeah, I mean, and you can come in and just be an offensive coordinator at West Virginia and make the same money or something. Why not? It makes total sense to me.
I also
tell you what, Jackson. I agree with you. Jackson is like in deep thought down there, and he's not sharing what
he's pondering.
He's not sharing.
No, another question for you guys is tying into that. We see coaches that are coaching into their 70s. Okay, Joe Pa coached until he was, he was old as hell when he coached. Bobby Bowden was old. I don't foresee, because you didn't have a lot of downtime to begin with as a football coach in NCAA football as a head coach. You have even less now. I mean, you at least could go get a suntan for a couple weeks after your bowl game, right? Now you're putting mints under the kids' pillows and tucking them in and patting them on the ass, trying to keep these kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're wiping their mouths and cleaning their noses and just being their buddy, texting them and shit. You have no downtime. So can you do that for 20 years at a college and still be sane, be healthy? I mean, Urban Meyer was successful, but he was burning the candle at both ends, and he had to tap out a few times and take kind of a step back. Now I think it's even more, if you're in fourth and fifth gear all year instead of downshifting a few times. Guys, what do you think?
Oh, if Urban was coaching these days, he would be out in a heartbeat. He would just go, "I'm retiring, everybody."
Mm-hmm.
Who was that, Jackson? I missed that.
Oh, I was talking about Urban Meyer, where if it was this era that he was coaching in, he'd be retiring at the same time Nick Saban is. He would be like, I'm out. Peace.
Yeah.
Well, you hear from the vast majority of coaches, they bitch about the coaching calendar. Because before they can even get a season finished, I mean, the transfer portal's opening. You got early signing day happening. For the guys, especially with this playoff coming, where you got this 12-team playoff, well, you're trying to recruit your own team back or to stay while they're out there. People are in their ear with NIL money. On top of you got recruits that's coming in for early signing day that want to come in January. So I mean the calendar's just all jacked, and until someone fixes this whole transfer portal, when you can transfer early sign, like I've heard different people say maybe early signing day should be prior to the season starting. The high school kids, seniors or whatever, go ahead and sign. They know where they're going. What the good does it do with the transfer portal? Because they can sign and then hit the transfer portal if a coaching change is made.
What if instead of December, the transfer portal is moved to May? I mean, school's out by the end of that month. You know, you move it to the whole month of May and like early June. No headaches, and you can prepare for the regular season that way.
Jackson, here's the thing that coaches would poo all over. They want the kids in that spring ball game. They want that spring ball practice, especially for the offensive players that need to learn a system. I would say that's a great idea, but let's make sure it is in maybe March and cut the April transfer portal completely out of the picture and just kind of take that window there and that window there and kind of combine them and meet in the middle in, let's just say, March. I don't know. That's just my thought. I mean, it's not conducive to the school year, but we all know these kids aren't here for freaking, to get a bachelor's degree. They could give two craps.
Yeah, the vast majority of them, I agree with you on that. But it's like I tell people that make that comment that, well, bowl games don't matter anymore. Well, for 90% of the kids that play college football, yes, it does, because that could be their last and final football game. Only a very small percentage of these guys in college are going to make the NFL. Right. So it does mean a lot to those kids and their families and all that stuff that's out there. Now, to the athlete that we know, a guy he's going to get drafted, no, it probably doesn't matter to those guys. But it does matter to families and some of these kids that will never play college football again. So they do matter. And I'll watch a bowl game. I don't care who's playing because I love college football.
I don't want to see kids transfer before the bowl game. Kevin, you're exactly right, because I don't want to see that. I don't want those kids to have the option. As a coach, I don't want to look down my roster and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this many kids before a bowl game, because guess what? Your ability to make that bonus is counting on your roster. And if your roster's picked or depleted, because look at North Carolina. That wasn't the North Carolina, the UNC, that West Virginia would have played 3 weeks prior to the bowl game. Drake May wasn't there. You had 4 other studs that weren't playing. So it's not only it's terrible for the coach, it's shitty for the fans.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's the product on the field, because we're the ones paying the subscriptions, buying the merchandise. We're the ones.
Well, that's what they need to do is, they won't get a hold of NIL, and obviously they probably can't do much with NIL. I mean, people can make however much money they want to, right? I mean, we can't tell them how much they're allowed to make. So they probably won't be able to do much NIL, but they can do something about this transfer portal, and that would take a lot of pressure off these coaches, right? To know that I'm not going to be losing players to the transfer portal. They can put in there that, if you transfer, you lose a year of eligibility playing football, and can shut that thing back down. That's what needs to be done, and that way, as fans, we'd enjoy the game a lot more, because then all of a sudden players aren't transferring. So then, if you have a player that is going to be, really good in the bowl game, you're going to have him in the bowl game because he's most likely not going to transfer because he'd have to sit out. And so, that's what they need to fix right now.
Or put the contract in place. Like you signed a contract for 12 months. We have you for 12 months. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, I want paid, I want to be treated like an employee, but just be able to pick up and leave whenever you want and still keep your money. There has to be some sort of financial penalty for leaving early. And that needs to be, creatively done by, the administrators, the coaching staff. But then again, unless there is bumpers put on there, you're always going to have the team that just has money to burn and doesn't give two shits.
Yeah, you got to watch those contracts because you got to remember if you're trying to tie them to the university, that's pay for play. And you can't do that. That's what they need to do to get rid of the pay for play rule and fix that transfer portal by shutting it down again and make them sit out a year. And our college football will be back to a normal thing like we're used to seeing, I believe. But the NCAA is not going to do a damn thing about it. Let me take a moment here to tell everybody you're watching Big 12 football at the Boys College Football, brand new channel for us. Just getting started, brand new show here. Shane and I just pretty much started this show, so we appreciate everybody coming out. But I do want to tell you that our show is brought to you by Aura. If you need cybersecurity, and let me tell you, everybody does. Look up Aura. When you could get a 2-week free trial. Jackson, would you mind putting the link into the chat for Aura, please? If you get a 2-week free trial there, just for signing up, and when I signed up for my 2-week free trial, they found me on the dark web on all my passwords to everything, including my bank accounts. So they shut all that down for me. I got all that in my 2-week free trial. So, and after that, it was just like $11 a month. And guess what? They got a VPN. Anybody know how much a VPN costs a month? It's about $20 a month. So you're getting all that cybersecurity and a VPN and everything for like $11 a month. So I highly recommend it and stuff. And I'm sure that that link's in there. Chat for you there. There it is. aura.com/MarkRogers. And be sure you use that link. We get a little bit of money, and then it helps us out around here. So we appreciate all you guys. Okay, so anyway, back to the conversation. I didn't mean to interrupt everybody, but I had to pay a bill there.
Joey, we're not going to solve this in the next 3 minutes, but it's something we're going to continue to talk about on the show. It's very interesting because I think it's going to be like an earthquake. You're going to have a big shift, and I've said this for weeks, guys. You've heard it here. When Florida State and Clemson are the two that are going to break ranks, and then you're going to see, a few teams trickle over, and it's going to be like a chess match. SEC move, Big Ten move, and they're just going to match tit for tat. 2 teams, 3 teams, 2 teams, until they get to their, armistice, and then guys, then the big one's going to hit. Then you're going to have the fallout. You're going to have the teams after those first 2. There's going to be the scramble not to be left out. And you think it's cutthroat right now. I would love to be able to report to you on the what's going on behind closed doors, because I'm sure there's some people making some phone calls, greasing the skids, just trying to make it so their team or from their state or school that they graduated from or they're a fan of is not the one left holding the bag. So
I think Wake Forest and Boston College and Syracuse are basically your next Oregon States, Washington States.
Jackson, I think you're right. And I think Duke, even though they're a storied basketball program, I think they're going to be at, outside looking in.
If Rutgers and Maryland were still in the ACC, I would say that they would be on that list of possible being the next Washington States and Oregon States too. Even though they're in the Big Ten now, they're safe, right?
I don't think the rationale before fits with the rationale now. Before it was, number of the population density of that. No, it's the brand, it's the fan base, they're looking at a lot of different. It's just not TV share, guys. It's not TV market. because we're on a global, everything is streamed. It's a different landscape.
I think Maryland would have been way more than okay than Rutgers, because I mean Rutgers doesn't have a big TV market, but Maryland's got that Baltimore TV market, and that saves them.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does. They've got Baltimore, Washington D.C. area. Although if you ask people in Washington D.C., most of them are really West Virginia fans or Virginia Tech fans, in Washington. So that's the thing about that. So that Maryland loses a lot there. That's why West Virginia's bigger fan base than Maryland is West Virginia. That's because of that right there. There's just more fans out in their area that either went to West Virginia or grew up in West Virginia, and moved there. So there's a lot of fans there. So,
if something's gonna shake loose, just keep my eye on 2025 when the SEC's negotiating that new TV deal.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Lord.
And they would be smart, Kevin, to do what the Big 12 did and negotiate as early as they can, so they have some leverage. But because what happened to the Pac-12 guys? They waited way too long.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what also killed that conference was they kept voting in Larry Scott to get that contract extension as commissioner. And then and unfortunately, Oregon State, Washington State were two of the schools that voted for that. And then they're wondering why, what happened to us? What happened to us? You voted for an incompetent leader. I'm sorry to bring it up to you, gents, but y'all, what'd you think would happen? Do you think you were going to be saved?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean,
well, guys, it's been a great
one
show.
One more time, I want to tell everybody, be sure and send me a list of what you think college football will look like in 2030. I'd love to have that, because I'm going to do a video on that. If you're in the chat, you're in the comments, you're watching this video later, my email address is real easy. It's footballnewshour@gmail.com. So football news hour. It's a plural on news, NEWS. Footballnewshour@gmail.com. Send those to me. I want to do a video on that, and I'd be interested to know everybody's take on where they think it'll be in 2030. Kevin, we're going to let you give your last word here, and we're going to go ahead and sign off for tonight.
I just want to say appreciate you guys letting me hang out. I always enjoy talking college football, and great show, guys. Great show.
Well, now tell everybody where to find you at. Now you got a pretty daggone good channel over yourself.
Twisted Tailgate on YouTube. Just look up the Twisted Tailgate, Twisted Rooster channel. We do some live shows and videos, and sometimes it's not always college football. Sometimes we just a group of people get together and talk about the world.
Well, Kevin, appreciate you coming in.
You're getting close to 1,000, Kev. Let me see, 230 subs away from 1,000. Let's help get you to 1,000.
I appreciate that, Jackson. Thank you, buddy.
Well, I'm subbing right after the show here, so you got one here.
All right, thank you, Shane. I appreciate that, buddy. But you guys have a good evening, and like I said, great show. We'll holler at you later.
I'll see you later, Kevin. See you later, buddy.
The cold weather now.
That's right.
Jackson, appreciate you coming in as always. I know we find you a bunch of Jacksonian. I love your Discord channel there, Jacksonian too. We do a lot of good, interesting discussions there. I encourage everybody to look up Jacksonian on Discord. So,
here we go. I'm gonna add the link right.
He's gonna post the link now. Yeah, everybody join up over there. We have some interesting discussions, and also Jackson always posts things when there's a show going on or a show coming up, so you don't miss things. So I mean, it's really cool. It's a really good channel. Shane, you got anything else to say, buddy, before we get out of here?
No, I don't. We're back to our regular, weekly show, and be sure to check us out next week. We have some, interesting topics to discuss, and we'll continue to touch on this. We might talk a little bit about West Virginia's coaching search, the Big 12 as a conference, football versus basketball. Is it a basketball conference now because they're just so good in basketball, or are they still a fantastic football conference? But
and we're also going to Shane and I are going to start a channel, And we'll tell you more about
sir.
that next week. We'll tell you
Next
all
week.
about that next week too. So that's right. So everyone have a great night. We appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week.